Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Low Season Traveller Insider Guides. I'm Jed Brown, your host for this week's episode, and today we're joined by Anthony Lark, who is the Executive Director of Shinta Mani Hotels in Asia. Now, I met Anthony just before Christmas when I interviewed him for the climate-friendly travel podcast, as Shinta Mani perfectly encapsulates the principles of responsible travel, tourism and hospitality practices. At the end of a fascinating podcast, which you can find in this episode's show notes, I just knew that we had to welcome Anthony back for this low season traveller podcast, as Anthony very much shares our passion for low season travelling. Delivering experiences that changes lives for their guests and in surrounding communities alike, Shinta Mani Hotels are designed by co-owner Bill Bensley, whom Architectural Digest calls a pioneer in sustainable hotel design. Each of their small and unique properties reflects its natural and cultural environment, providing heartfelt hospitality that supports the people, animals and ecosystems of Cambodia through the Shinta Mani Foundation. So sit back and relax as we head over to Cambodia and meet one of the most passionate, knowledgeable and experienced hospitality experts in the world today. Enjoy. So, Anthony, you are most welcome to the Low Season Traveller Insider Guides podcast. Great to see you again.
It's wonderful to be with you again in a new year as well.
Absolutely, a new year and a new start, hopefully, and a new great start for our industry as well.
Yeah, a new hope.
A new hope, exactly. So, look, first of all, let's get straight into this. Could you just please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey in travel, tourism and hospitality to start us off?
Certainly. Thank you for asking. Well, my name's Anthony Lark. I'm originally from Sydney, Australia, and I grew up in Sydney, and my mum and dad took me out of school when I was 16 or just turning 17, and we spent a year traveling together around Europe. We were one of those Australian families who went to London and bought a car and drove around Europe, and then you could take it back after a year tax-free and all of that. So I spent a year traveling through Europe, which was very painful when you're 16 with your mum and dad, but they're great. But it was the most wonderful education, because when all of my friends were in school in Sydney finishing their higher school certificate, etc., I got this incredible education. We would not stay in 5-star hotels. We would roll up in a city or a town in Europe, and we'd look for a hotel using the AA map of Europe and various hard copy guides to sort of staying in pensions or B&Bs, etc. So I got this incredible insight into the raw nature of how hospitality, people arriving in your home and you welcoming them as a family, and then cooking for them and helping them with the luggage, and the next morning we would all check out and do it again. This went on for a long time. So I got an instinct for the hotel business then, and when I came back to Australia, I got a job as a busboy in what was then Australia's best hotel, and I loved it so much I gave up my studies studying architectural drafting and engineering at a university in Sydney, a technical college, and took up a full-time job as a busboy, much to my father's disgust and chagrin. In the early 70s or the late 70s, hotel business wasn't very glamorous. And in Australia, it was a fledgling industry that hadn't really yet matured. So I became, the head. I stuck it out and loved what I did, and ended up being the head busboy. And then I got behind the bar, and I learned from some wonderful mixologists and wine guys and ladies, and became a bellboy. They moved me to housekeeping. I then moved to, the kitchens and tapping kegs of beer in the afternoons, engineering. I got, if you like, the school of the school of the hotel business from within the hotel business rather than a college.
Yeah.
And then I eventually got on the front desk where all the glamorous people worked, and worked a couple of jobs, and was very fortunate to have been part of the pre-opening team for the Regent Hotel in Sydney, which is now the Four Seasons. And this hotel was groundbreaking in Australia. It set the highest standards that Australia had ever seen. And I ran the front desk there and got promoted to like an assistant manager there. And this is a 620 room hotel where we wore black morning suits, and it was Australia's most mature hotel at the time. So I got a great education from, working with some wonderful people. One of whom was Adrian Zecker, who was one of the Regent Hotel's founding directors of the company. A couple of years later, Adrian Zecker, I'd seen him somewhere, and he said he's opening a hotel in Thailand, a little resort. He'd sold his shares in Regent, and he said, "Have you ever heard of Phuket?" And I said, "I've never been to Thailand." Phuket? What is that? Yep, it wasn't on the map yet. But what he was doing was developing the first Aman resort, which was Amanpuri.
Right.
And it was just about to open, and he must have been smoking something, because he offered me the job as general manager. And so at the age of 27, I landed in Phuket with him and oversaw the opening of what was the first Aman hotel in the world, Amanpuri, our flag, which was still the flagship, which was a 40-room hotel where we experimented with all of these non-hotel practices under the belief that we had to revolutionize the way we were doing things to justify our $300 a night room rate back in 1988. And so we did things which were now looking back very innovative, not requiring people to sign for food and beverage when they finish breakfast, what have you, including transfers in the room rates, not charging for tennis and the gym, which many hotels were doing, and generally creating an atmosphere where the hotel manager in a small property, I might add, acted more as the host, more as the concierge, and went forth with a sense of ownership. And he bestowed in me a sense of ownership to the point where he was, very, very generous in terms of how I would manage financial situations, sales and marketing decisions. The way that we managed our staff was all based on what he asked me to do, which was to imagine that I was a wealthy guy and that I was the owner of the Amanpuri. How would I treat guests from the moment they made a reservation to after they checked out? So we implemented systems using that very simple modus operandi. And that MO, whilst it may seem like a bit of a cliche, treat our guests as we would welcoming friends into our home, really formed the basis of this whole service culture that became very synonymous with what Aman did very well. Apart from building design-driven small hotels in exotic places, Aman was very famous for the fact that it didn't have the feeling of a hotel, that It was an hotel, as he called it, where the general manager was the concierge. And I would wait there in the mornings and people would come to breakfast, and I'd ask them what they're doing today, much the same that I would ask you if you were staying in my house. Yeah. And I would make sure I shared with you a little boat ride I knew, or a beautiful drive to a waterfall, or, don't forget to come back after lunch and have a couple of massages before your Negroni at dinner. What sort of newspaper do you like to read? And we would bring in the Financial Times for all the Poms, and the USA Today for the Americans, and the Sydney Morning Herald for the Aussies. That was a major luxury. Yeah. People getting their own newspapers. I think it was a day late, but no one cared. There was no internet.
Great. We take that.
So I spent 12 years with Aman, opening Amanpuri, and then the next 4 Aman resorts in Indonesia and in Yangon in Burma, or Myanmar, I should say. over a period of 12 years, hiring the management, setting up the systems as we would run them in Amampuri, yet with obviously a different cultural aspect, and guest experiences differed from one place to the other, but was the same basis. Friendly, young, inexperienced managers who were not brainwashed by Hilton or Sheraton in those days.
Yeah.
And where there really was a spirit of hospitality that the big boys and the chains just couldn't emulate, and people loved it. And my staff in the lobby in Amampuri didn't wear shoes. They glided around in Jim Thompson silk dresses and with bare feet, and we would remember people's names, and we would have there was no computer anywhere in the visible range of any guest. Those sorts of things we did differently.
Yeah, that's incredible. First of all, what an incredible entry into hospitality. But what I'm also struck by is that notion of hospitality. Even the word hospitality, it does evoke the hospitality that we would have, bringing somebody into our house and everything else. And it sounds like it's very common sense, and it sounds like it should be easy to do. And yet still today, I would say it's relatively rare that hotels get it right. Why is that? Is it incredibly difficult to do?
It's actually very simple to do, but there are challenges that most hoteliers face that I didn't face there. One, I had an owner who was far less interested in the profit and loss at the end of the month, and never asked me a question about food cost ever. He was more interested in the guest experience and in the quality of attention to detail, particularly maintenance and landscaping. It was all about the visual thing, and the service aspect. Secondly, with 40 rooms, I can manage that. It's like having 4 children. I can manage my 4 children quite nicely, but when I end up with 40 children, I'm going to be in trouble. And so when you have 40 rooms and the average length of stay is, let's say, 5 days, you only actually have 7 or 8 arrivals a day. So it's not that difficult. But if I was in the Intercontinental or the Sheraton in those days, or the Hyatt, I would have 150 arrivals a day, and you just physically can't do it. Yeah. And secondly, that kind of hospitality, or that kind of attitude where the managers are left alone to manage their guest experience properly, was done on the basis, that our guests weren't coming this far to receive the sort of service that they received in one of those chain hotels. We went out of our way to befriend guests. There were a lot of guests at Amampuri and at Trisara who became my friends because of that, and are still friends today. I stay with people in Italy who used to be guests. I know that the children of the guests are now the guests.
Incredible.
And so there was a whole range of things that unfolded because of that attitude. So, but the size of it was important. The owner not being, obsessive about the financial performance. And this is the third thing where most hoteliers can't manage what we managed to do in '88, was the very simple fact that these hotels are more or less homogenized now. Hyatt has 8 brands. One of them is a little boutique brand. Intercontinental has God knows how many brands. One of them happens to be Six Senses. Yeah. But believe me, there is someone at Six Senses in the head office of Intercontinental looking over the general manager's shoulder every morning, and the general manager is asked questions about performance that frankly keeps these poor girls and guys in their offices a lot more. They spend a lot more time worried about payroll and cost of sales and the cost of acquisition and all of these financial issues. And frankly, we didn't give a damn. We believed that if you treated people well and the place looked great, the food was interesting, and you were nice, and it was the location was magnificent, there was a very good chance that these guests would come back. And it was that simple.
I love that. I think it reminds me of years ago. I remember being with a larger company, and they would always talk at the beginning of the year as to the starting point was how much money had to be
Yeah.
made this year, how much revenue or whatever else. And there was a few of us at the time on the senior management team with this particular company, and we were just saying, how about we just delight people? We deliver value, deliver something that they truly value. And if we get that right, the profit will take care of itself. The money side will happen, but, focus instead on delivering value and what people are looking for.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't go into any deal, whether it's real estate or hospitality, with a balance sheet open. You've got to go in there with a sense of mission and a vision that enables you to achieve what I just outlined. And of course, a lot of these hotels don't make money. Financially speaking, a 40-room hotel on Phuket Island, with the amount of overheads we had, and a distinct, dare I say, low season, had its challenges, right? And so there were times when, in global financial crises, when the fixed costs of these little places were relatively high. Lots of giveaways and champagne flowing and flowers everywhere, and the P&Ls can suffer, and so that's why these hotels expand to get critical mass. And so if you have, when we had hotels in Bali, for instance, Bali's high season was completely opposite to the Phuket high season. So when Bali was doing very well, it was Phuket's low season, and I could always borrow some money from my friends at Amandari or Amankeeler. And it all worked out well in the end. When they were in trouble in December, January, February, March, they would call me up for a few bucks to send in rupiah to them. But it is difficult. The key to what made Adrian Zecker successful in those early Amans was the promise of building residential villas. The mixed use development hotel model was at its very, very early days. There were only a few hotels doing it, one in Bali, a couple in Hawaii, where the hotel would occupy a small parcel of land on the site, and residential villas would be sold to people who loved that hotel, who wanted that lifestyle for them in the future. Yeah. And if you come to Phuket and you think that relatively speaking, you could spend 1 or 2 holidays here, and your friends and family would come a couple of times a year, and we would rent it out and manage it for you in your absence when you weren't here and you went back to Europe or the States. It actually made good sense.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of people do that, and it actually worked very well. But it doesn't appeal to the average finance director or corporate development director. He would just take one look at the balance sheet and the P&L and walk away.
Fair play. Look, I think that brings us pretty nicely then onto you've had quite an incredible career from that kind of early start of a trip around Europe, and then obviously your time with Aman. You're currently, of course, with Shinta Mani, and many in our audience they might not be, don't know where they've been, Anthony. They might not be aware of Shinta Mani. Could you give us a little bit of an overview to Shinta Mani first of all, and about the organization, about the owner, because obviously I think we've established that's pretty important, and I suppose the vision behind Shinta Mani.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a privilege and an honor to have fallen into this role after my previous roles in Phuket. But to cut a long story short, Shinta Mani was not started out with a balance sheet in mind or with a expansion plan and a major master plan of conquering the world with Shinta Manis. Its roots were very much embedded in the DNA of what the Shinta Mani Foundation does, and that is helping people, helping animals, and helping the habitat in which we do business. And I know it can be a cliche. Every hotel has a hobby farm, But these guys, our principal shareholders, who are Bill Bensley, who's obviously the famed architect and designer, and Bill's love of the planet and its people was very attractive to the original principal owner of Shinta Mani, whose name is Sakun Chanprida. Sakun is a Thai Cambodian man who lives in Bangkok. Family originated from Cambodia, and he went there actually assisting the church with initiatives that were helping people in need. And one of those things that he stumbled upon was a rundown school in the old French Quarter of Siem Reap, near the temples of Angkor. And Sakun immediately saw that this he had an opportunity to develop this school and put in disadvantaged kids in a situation where we would offer them full scholarships, get them off the farm, give them some skills to give them some hope for them and their future families, right? And we developed this school, and it was called the Shinta Mani Foundation Hospitality School. Well, next to that was a little hotel that was a shack that he had spoken to the owner of and decided that let's, next to the school, build a little hotel where the kids in the school could get some practice as a waiter or housekeeping and all those other things. So we did that, and we ended up with Shinta Mani Angkor. So Shinta Mani Angkor was born from the DNA of his philanthropic efforts to help people. So there was a really very pure start to it all. It wasn't done with providing balance sheets to the banker to see how much money he could make. Bill saw an opportunity to create a marvelous design there. Sakun obviously arranged the financing with Bill. Bill invested in the hotel. They then bought the little place across the road and built a few more of the Bensley pool villas. And we ended up with a magnificent hotel of around 100 rooms called Shinta Mani Angkor. It's in the leafy old green section of Siem Reap, just a few minutes from the temples and the charming old town. And this hotel was running nicely. They had no major plans for expansion. And eventually, Sakun and his father and Bill Bensley got a whiff of a situation in the southern cardamom forest, just south of Phnom Penh. A tract of 300 hectares of land was being, sold, and the sale of this land could have fallen into the hands of a major offshore mining company who would have destroyed this natural habitat and this corridor for breeding of birds and all sorts of other animals. And so they bought the land. And we ended up with a piece of land that's larger than Central Park, 300 hectares. And Bill and Sakun went about designing their dream, which was a hotel that Bill would always design as a place he would stay himself and own himself, which is called Shinta Mani Wild. And this is about an hour south of Siem Reap. Our second hotel opened at the end of 2018. And it only has 15 luxurious, very glamorous, almost 100 square meter tents. And to call them tents is not doing them any justice, because they are magnificent places. Set above our own magnificent river and Timor Rung, far enough away that if someone screamed in the room next door, you literally couldn't hear them. Wow. A little headquarters with a restaurant in it, a great bar. And we filled it with Bensley butlers, who were adventure butlers, not as in butler, aka Savoy Hotel, waiting outside to dry your socks. These guys and girls delivered all of the experiences that Bill and Sakun dreamed they wanted to give our guests in that experience. And so it's very much a natural, sustainable, and beautiful, beautiful world where we're actually partnering with the World Wildlife Alliance. Part of the income from the hotel goes to fund 14 rangers from the World Wildlife, the Wildlife Alliance. We built them housing, we built them motorbikes, we built them all the things they needed to patrol that 300 hectares of forest against poachers and against illegal logging and against all sorts of other nefarious activities. And so these poachers go out in motorbikes, sort of stealing, confiscating chainsaws and removing traps and snares on a daily basis. And we actually take our guests on the back of the bike when we find these little camps, and we tote back the chainsaw back. It's not dangerous. It's just we caught them, and we keep a track of what the progress we make. So Shinta Mani Wild was based on a number of unfolding a number of experiences from the majesty of your tent. You can either sit in the tent and read beautiful books from all the great novelists, or you can go with our butlers and our executive chef and go foraging, and we will dig up wild potatoes, and that will be part of your dinner tonight. We'll show you where these beautiful the sweetest bananas you've ever eaten grow. We do dinners where we don't use food that wasn't grown within 25 kilometers of the property. And we developed an all-inclusive philosophy so that you pay a one-day rate per couple, which isn't actually that expensive. And it includes all food, all beverage, including French, Bordeaux and Burgundy wines. You can sit there and drink tequila until the sun goes down if you want, and it's all inclusive. Unlimited spa treatments, beautiful wellness offerings, including yoga and other wellness activities. But one of the things that drew people to Shinta Mani Wild was that when you enter our park, our butler, you transfer out of our car into an old, World War II Jeep, and we take you through the trails to what is a tower, which Bill designed, which is like 100 steps to the top of this tower. And our guests zip line in on a 370-meter zip line that will make you need a heart scan to check your ECG before you get on. It's the most incredible arrival experience of any hotel in the world. And of course, if you weigh too much, or if you don't weigh enough, a zip line is not for you, or if it's pouring rain, or if you just don't want to do it and mum and dad are not interested in zip lining, that Jeep can take you to the lobby to check in. But in terms of bucket list, wow, amazing arrival experiences, there is nothing like this. You not only zip line through the canopy of a primary forest, but our general manager and our marketing guy are waiting for you at the bottom, and we have drones that we send up above you as you're crossing the waterfall in the forest, and we video you zip lining in while you're screaming from the top of the canopy. We then share that film with you, totally unscripted and surprised. This thing continues to unfold. I've never seen a hotel experience that is more true to what they say they are, and in fact the experience exceeds the expectation. How most hotels, you get there, you read all the hype, you see the picture of the presidential suite in the brochure or whatever it is, and you get there and it's not quite that. This thing is the antithesis of that. From the moment you get in that Jeep to meet your butler, to ziplining in, to our general manager David and his beautiful wife Solvig, who's our wellness director, to lovely young South Africans, telling you about how your next couple of days can unfold in a very bespoke fashion. It gives me goosebumps to even tell you about it, and I work there.
So obviously that's probably one of the best entrances that anybody can have in any property. I've never heard of anything quite like that, to be honest.
Yeah, if you look at if you just, even on YouTube, if you just put in Shinta Mani Wild, a Bensley collection, and you look down, you'll see a National Geographic video, and it shows you the entrance to the park from on the Jeep that I described, ending up with you clipping into your safety harness and ziplining down into the lot, where you literally zipline into the lobby, and as you arrive in the lobby, our general manager hands you a margarita. for your troubles.
That's a great start, isn't it, to any vacation? That's phenomenal. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And I've seen the video actually, Anthony, as well. And I would encourage everyone. We'll share a link on the podcast description so that everybody can just click straight onto it and see it for themselves. You also, you kind of touched on this really before with regards to Shinta Mani, and I suppose a lot of what Shinta Mani is about is I suppose conservation, and we might almost call it sustainable tourism and everything else. And I suppose this kind of keys into what you were talking about before with the origins of the Shinta Mani Foundation. Tell us a little bit more about your approach to, I suppose, sustainability and doing the right thing as being good global custodians.
Yeah, it's an important issue, and it actually drives everything we do. It's not something that we wrote as a post-opening marketing gesture to get some good PR. This is the DNA of our company started from doing good. And it was interesting. I had dinner with Bill Bensley last week in Bangkok, and I said to him, Bill, how would you describe the company? It's like 5 years old now. How would you describe who we are, what we are? And Bill said, interesting question. He said, I would say now that we're a small hotel company with design-driven hotels, where we unfold fabulous guest experiences, always focused on sustainability and taking care of the people, the animals, and the places in which we do business, doing our best to not have an impact. And in many ways, that was summarized by Bill saying, our hotels that truly have a purpose. They have a purpose. They're not just concrete buildings that have been built for a balance sheet or a banker or a profit. They were built to do good. And I run the Shinta Mani Foundation, which started off as the school, but has grown to encompass and embrace a number of other initiatives. As after the hotels opened, Bill and Sakun, after the school was open and was functioning, which was the first thing we did, they also realized that there were a number of other incredibly important needs in the community that we could help with. One was that there were lots of families, particularly women, who had been deserted by their husbands, had lots of kids, and who were struggling to find employment and to support their own families. And so we started a microloan business. We have interest-free business loans that we give to literally hundreds of, particularly women and young families in the Siem Reap area. And these buy weaving mills. One lady bought 7 pigs. I think she now has 30 pigs. Their kids are going to school. Some of their kids are going to the Shinta Mani Foundation. It's quite incredible. We built small satellite English schools attached to very poor local schools, where after school, we pay for teachers in this learning environment to do English and learn, arithmetic and English after school. A lot of these initiatives are being funded not just by Shinta Mani Hotels, but by our guests. We have a lot of guests who leave donations with the Shinta Mani Foundation when they leave the hotel. Bill Bensley is probably the biggest single supporter in terms of donating to these causes. So he's actually putting his money where his mouth is, if you like. We realized, and Bill's to his credit, realized that actually waterborne diseases cause more death than mosquitoes. And so we realized that a lot of people in the Shinta Mani area didn't have access to water. They were carrying water around in buckets and pumping water out of dirty wells. And so we did a deal with Kohler in Germany to start a fund with a local contractor to dig water wells down to between 20 and 50 meters in people's houses, literally in their backyard, pump the water up using normal pumps, and then filter it through a cola water filter system, so that their whole family could have clean drinking water and washing water. And I think they've done 4,000 wells. Where we still continue to build wells. It's quite incredible.
Yeah.
We've innovated that in many ways, but that's another thing we do. The Shinta Mani Foundation's schools and education and well-being of the people in the places we do business is what it's all about. And if there are other causes that we can find that, for instance, growing crops and then helping sell crops to people to teach them how to farm more effectively and more efficiently using better seeds and less chemicals and fertilization, we'll do that. And in fact, we have done that on our own small farm. So we continue to push the envelope when it comes to building the Shinta Mani Foundation, and it's all now a matter of funding. And so our guests, present and past, send money to the Shinta Mani Foundation, and they can choose where the money goes, specifically to small business loans or to the water system or to the education and the hospitality school. Or they can just send it to a general fund and we use the funds. But the difference between the Shinta Mani Foundation and every other charity or foundation exercise I've ever seen is that the administrative costs of running the Shinta Mani Foundation, we have 7 or 8 people doing accounting, auditing, they're audited by KPMG every year to make sure that it's true to the promise. Mostly salaries and the cost of a vehicle and the fuel for the vehicle, all those things, 100% of that is paid for by Shinta Mani Hotels, not the foundation.
Wow.
So literally $10 goes to that lady buying a pig or to teaching kids English at school after school. It is not one cent gets used to fund any administration, any marketing, any overheads, anything like that. So it's really lovely to do business this way.
It's quite incredible, and I think it's it makes me think again. When we talk about responsible tourism, it makes me think about one of the big questions I think which more and more travelers are asking themselves is, what is the legacy of my travel? What am I leaving behind as a result of traveling? Am I taking away from that destination, or am I actually leaving it a little bit better than when I found it? And I think that seems to be very much where Shinta Mani is. Are the clients, they must, before they get there, do they understand it as much before they get there, and then when they get there they get it completely, or do they know about it from the beginning, generally?
A little bit of both. A lot of guests, as you know, do a lot of research before they get in a plane. Other guests, just want to do something they've never done before and tick off a box that they've always wanted to do. They may have read about us in Condé Nast and Travel and Leisure or somewhere. Irrespective of how much they know prior to arrival, our general managers, particularly David at Wild, sits you down with that margarita after you're recovering from the zip line, and we explain to you a little bit about what we do without filling you up too much or with information that might not be absorbed. But then in the rooms, we really outlay it. We really show you exactly what we're doing. Our butlers also talk about it. One of the beauties of this is that these foundation initiatives are actually the basis of our guest experiences. Our guests don't go and sit at the beach. They go with the Wildlife Alliance rangers. They go with our chef foraging. They go with Chunin, the manager of our Shinta Mani Foundation, in our car, and we visit these ladies and these homes that we built. They built 23 homes around Shinta Mani, where the homes had just fallen apart, bamboo and wooden homes in weather, etc. And there's little flags from the country of the people that helped donate to it.
Nice.
And we meet the families that were the recipients of the foundation funding. So they become inherently part of the guest experience. I was there last week with some friends of mine, and we went to visit this lady in her home. and she was a recipient of the Shinta Mani Foundation's small business loan, microloan. And she was very proud, and she was crying because she met us, and she was very thankful. But her daughter was selling these beautiful sugar cane and sort of Cambodian herbed lollies and sweets outside. And so, they were thrilled to be able to buy every single packet of lollies that this lady had outside.
Yes.
So they really felt a part of the process. It's not just lip service. You actually get, there's dust on your shoes in one of these places when you come to stay at Shinta Mani, and we're expanding that into the village near Shinta Mani Wild as we speak, with providing water to homes that don't even have any water, let alone clean water. So it continues to grow. It's very satisfying.
I think it's wonderful, and I think as you were saying, that the guests can go out and meet the people that benefit from the foundation as well. And that's what our audience do when they travel in the low seasons. It's a huge part of that is because they want to meet and engage with the local population to help them have a better understanding of day-to-day life there. And I think that's absolutely wonderful.
So true. What's better is that in a small hotel, guests inevitably have time to speak to the waiter and the waitress and the bellboy and the guy that checks you in. There's a 40% chance that kid was a graduate of the Shinta Mani Foundation. And the level of pride in them explaining to an American or to a Brit about that. I'm a graduate of the Shinta Mani Foundation, it gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
It really does.
I think that's absolutely wonderful. Tell us a little bit about, obviously, we are low season traveler. Our audience do prefer to travel during the low season months. For your properties there in Cambodia, how does the experience differ between the low season quieter months and the peak season? And when are those two seasons broadly?
Oh, well, I guess the answer to that is very simple to me. If you're a smart traveler, you are by definition a low season traveler. I'm not pitching your podcast here, but I think it's a very apt name because just look at the list of logistics involved in coming to a place in the low season. The low season is a badge given to properties stemming from normally beach resorts, right, where you would hope for sunshine. I remember in the 70s and 80s seeing barrier reef islands in Queensland offering people their money back if they didn't get 3 days of 8 hours of sunshine between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Wow.
That's how fearful they were of the rain factor. And in fact, there are distinct advantages, and it becomes, to me, much more pleasant traveling in Southeast Asia's summer, which is between April and October or November, early November, let's say May to October inclusive. The reasons are, number one, first of all, flights are far more accessible and far less expensive. You're going to get a much better deal, normally 30 to 40% off a room rate in any hotel at this time of the year. It does not rain every day, but you might have these magical bursts of tropical downpours, like something out of a Vietnam movie, for an hour at sunset while you're having a spa treatment. And it's actually magical. It's something that you would pay for, that the people traveling in the high season never see because it's blue skies. There are more frogs belting. There are more lizards running up towards the lights, those little jink-chok lizards. You don't have to queue to get to any of the great little restaurants in the places we do business. I mean, at Wild, there are no restaurants except ours, but at Shinta Mani Angkor in the town of Siem Reap, there are incredible little bars and restaurants and coffee shops and boutiques. Well, you're going to be treated like a VIP because the owner is going to meet you coming in the low season. He's going to be much more appreciative of your custom. And so you get better rates, a greater sense of recognition and better welcomes. You don't queue up for anything. There's no traffic. If you want a massage at 3 o'clock, you're going to get a massage at 3 o'clock. And when you're at the bar and you want that Negroni, there isn't 4 people ordering, champagne cocktails before you. It's just a better time to travel, in my view, unless your only objective is a suntan and you're at the beach.
Yeah. It's literally only for fair weather travelers during the peak season, really, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
I love that. Before we let you go, I'm very conscious of your time. You're always very generous with your time, Anthony.
Happy
but
to do it.
you've got another property coming online on the 1st of May, and this is very exciting. The Shinta Mani Mustang. Tell us a little bit about what we can look forward to when it opens on the 1st of May.
All right. Well, the Shinta Mani Group has taken an opportunity to partner with a very well-known family who have a company called Mountain Lodges of Nepal, the Sherpa family, actually, and they're famous. And these guys own the airline, and they own the helicopters and things, and they're passionate about hospitality and, of course, their homeland. And before COVID, they built this magnificent 30-room hotel in the Mustang Valley, which is truly one of the world's last hidden, truly great travel experiences. This is the valley that was for hundreds of years closed off. There are no signs of any Western civilization in there at all. The people are incredible, small populations, but it's this dry valley that runs through what is the deepest gorge in the world at the foothill of the Annapurna range in the Himalayas, and it's a place where you will go, and it's like I said, it's an all-year hotel. It's 2 stories, and it's being currently redesigned now by Bill Bensley, and it's going to be truly magnificent. He's using some of the most famous art and being adorned with furniture and rugs and artwork and you name it, that will be so beautiful and so authentic to where it is. This is something Hyatt would never do, and I have lots of friends who work for Hyatt. I apologize to them, but they would do it. This is the antithesis of cookie cutter hospitality, and so Bill's putting his Bensley magic on this beautiful property, and our Shinta Mani Mustang will open in May. It will be run by a similar kind of general manager who will welcome guests the way that I just described to you. We will have Bensley butlers there to go with you on treks, to go with you on bike rides, to go with you to have breakfast on this glacier. We take guests up to a place higher than Everest Base Camp, to a magnificent place for breakfast where we lay out the champagne breakfast. You can only stay there an hour because the oxygen level will be too low. But it's truly going to be, there are caves there in the mountains which for thousands of years have been home to a whole range of people. World travelers know Mustang as one of the great places to visit. It's astounding, and some of the photographs are on shintamanihotels.com, but it's opening in May. Obviously that has a bit more of an extreme weather pattern because it does get cold between November and February.
Yep.
But the trekking season and bikes and horses and you name it, wellness experience with a 5th generation or a 10th generation, I think he is, Nepalese healer. He'll be running our spa and he'll look into your eyes and give you a couple of drops of Nepalese magic to make you see further.
I love that.
Things like that. So you're really going to be immersed in an authentic cultural experience there, unlike anything you've ever seen. In Bhutan, you always read about these fabulous lodges. Aman have 4 of them or 3 of them. Como have 5 of them. But let me tell you, at the end of the day, they are corporate Amans and Comos and whatever the other companies are that have built these small lodges there. We are in bed with a Nepalese family who have been doing business there for ages. We don't find any cookie cutter hospitality experiences here. It really will be one of the great travel experiences of the world, and you must come and visit us.
Absolutely, I would love to. I was in Nepal once years ago, and it was one of those destinations. It left its mark. It left its mark, partly because the people are just so wonderfully hospitable. Anyway, actually,
aren't they?
Yeah,
Aren't they?
incredible.
Hospitality. Well, it's like Cambodia. I've found after working in Thailand and Bali and Myanmar, hospitality truly comes naturally to Cambodians and Nepalese. It really does, and it starts with their family structure. They're very respectful to their grandparents, their doctors, their teachers, and anybody that comes into their lives that they should be treating with respect. And this translates directly to the way in which hospitality, the hospitality experience. You never need to tell someone in Cambodia when the guest comes in, please smile. I can't imagine telling people they should smile when the guest comes to the front desk.
Let me tell you, there's parts of the UK where you would actually definitely have to tell people to smile.
Yes, I'm sure. Well, it's unfortunately in places like this where hospitality has become homogenized and it's been driven by balance sheets and greedy owners, you lose the sense of grateful hospitality, and you lack a certain sense of sincerity in delivering hospitality. In the 80s, when Los Angeles, for instance, everyone was saying, you have a wonderful day. I've just met you for 1 second and you're telling me that you love me and I've got to have an incredible day. Well, it's not sincere.
Yeah. I always felt that way when people would say to me, "Oh, the service in the States is just the best." And I went there to California the first time years ago. I just remember thinking, I just see fakeness. I don't feel any genuine service. And for me, I genuinely feel like you only get that in Asia. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Well, like I said, having lived here for 35 years, I've opened hotels and worked with thousands of kids in Indonesia, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, and obviously now Nepal. Hospitality comes truly naturally to these people. It's not contrived. It starts as something they learn as a child with their mothers and fathers and grandmothers and people who come to visit their village. It literally is embedded in them. It's not something we have to train for, which is just a joy.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Anthony, we are sadly at the end of our time. I want to take the opportunity to thank you so much for sharing all of your experience and expertise and insights into not only Shinta Mani, but also your background as well, and the Shinta Mani Foundation, of course. We will be highlighting all of the links which we've talked about and those fabulous videos of the zipline on the show notes for all of our audience. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us again. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love speaking to you, as we did on our last podcast as well. And I wish you all the very best for the opening in Nepal. I'll be watching very carefully and following.
Thank you so much. And mate, I mean, the pleasure has been mine. I love telling stories about these incredible places that I'm privileged to call work. I mean, it's not work, this is more like a hobby, and it's something that gives me so much joy. So to share it with people like yourselves and your listeners is a real pleasure. So thank you for giving us the opportunity, and we'll see you in Cambodia or Nepal.
Yeah, I'll see you on that zip line soon, Anthony.
Come on, let me know when you're coming.
So there you have it, and you can learn more about Shinta Mani by visiting shintamani.com, where you'll be able to see for yourself the incredible properties which Anthony spoke about in this episode, as well as the video of the zipline entrance at Shinta Mani Wild and more information about the work of the Shinta Mani Foundation. But that's our show for this week. Thanks as always for your company, and if you enjoyed this podcast, please do leave us a positive rating and review on your podcast app, and also don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn to be the first to hear our latest low season stories, articles and guides. Have a great week wherever you are, and remember that travel is always better and fairer for the planet, the local communities and you the travellers, when it's without the crowds.